And away we go. It's quite a buster for this week. Although not much has been sent, there is something sent in our group chat with me, Eric, and Risk11. Just looking at whatever appears on our timelines, platforms on social media, and something that just captures our attentions for some reason. So Eric sent me a screenshot. The screenshot reads Tel Aviv. Yes, exactly. Vivet spelled backwards is Teviv, which is Tel Aviv without the L, or Tel as in hill in Hebrew. It's a common little wordplay or anagram style observation people make online. Vivet, Teviv, Tel Aviv minus the L. Clever catch. Okay, I don't get it. What am I looking at? Is there something I'm missing here? So, I now know that hill in Hebrew is Tel Aviv. Yeah, it's clever. I'll give them that. So what? Is there some kind of hidden message? Is there something? Is there some kind of conspiracy theory that I'm not looking into deep enough down the rabbit hole? Who knows? But yeah, the more you know, I guess. Next. Eric has sent a Twitterette post by the account NSNB @_S_N_B. The caption of that post reads, "Fans are concerned for Kai Cenat's mental health as his obsession with Vivette continues to spiral. He's reportedly even tattooed the logo on his forehead and hasn't been live for over 6 months." Ooh. Right, okay. Now I know the context of why Eric sent that screenshot. Eric responded directly to the post saying, "Okay, this is definitely not Kai Cenat." He also went on to say, "I'm just gonna set the record straight right now that this is not Kai Cenat. I'm starting to think that if Gideon continued doing what he was doing and didn't give his life to Christ and started catching pedophiles, would he be in a similar situation that Kai is in now? I think he would be." It is a very interesting point. Now, when I first saw that, I thought Gideon didn't turn his life to Christ. I've now read it in full, and clearly again, and now I realize if Gideon continued doing the content he was doing before turning his life to Christ, he could be in the same position as Kai Cenat is in right now, at least according to Eric. And there's no arguing with that. If anyone does want to argue, go ahead. Social media these days is just smoke and mirrors. Everything is an act. There's symbolism everywhere you go. Even if it's not obvious, there's always going to be tiny details that a small percentage of people will observe and look and believe. What does that mean? They look it up. Okay, maybe I want to go down that route. That's at least what not a lot of people, a handful of people would be like. Not the researching part of the small details. I'm talking about people who are so invested in these celebrities, influencers, and live streamers with what they do and what they say. Not often they question why these celebrities, influencers do the things that they do, and even if they do know the reason behind celebrities and influencers doing what they're doing and saying what they're saying, they'll believe it's all an act, it's all part of the joke. And the fans, likewise, will have a laugh and joke with them. Will have a joke at the things they say or do. But still, I got nothing else to say. If you're going to listen to celebrities, influencers, or even watch the things that they do, think about why they're doing what they're doing and saying what they're saying. Do you align with these people? And do you believe that the things that they say and do, if you would apply these things, will you get the same result as these celebrities and influencers? That's at least what I would consider. There's a saying by not a lot of people in Brazil, and a handful of people in Brazil. There's a saying. I'm not sure what the exact words are. I know the meaning of it is just because someone does something does not mean you'll get the same outcome. Like for instance, if one kid tries to pull the fire alarm one afternoon, all the children had to evacuate the building thinking, no, there's a fire, but realizing, oh, there isn't a fire. Then who pulled the alarm? Why was the alarm pulled? Fast forward a week, no one knows who was responsible for pulling that alarm. A couple months go by. At this point, the staff members that are looking into who and why the fire alarm was pulled on that day, they're like, oh, this is getting tiring, we don't know who done it. But even fast forward, maybe a couple more months after that, maybe in the next school year, maybe 2 school years later, a completely different kid does exactly what the first kid did with the fire alarm. He pulled it, the school had to evacuate because someone pulled the alarm, and then all of a sudden, the teachers caught the student red-handed. That kid is going to be getting detention for a very long time. And that's the meaning of that saying that I was thinking of a while back. Just because someone does something, don't think you'll get the same outcome. And that's pretty much the point I'm making with celebrities and influencers. There's nothing wrong with listening to celebrities and influencers and live streamers. It's about considering the outcomes of following said advice. Will you get the same outcome as these celebrities? Or will it be a different story for you if you were the one to follow said advice by celebrities, influencers, and live streamers? It is very important that we consider these things, no matter what. And that is all that has been sent onto the group chat since the last time I recorded a podcast episode. With all that being said, let's get right into the news, or at least the rest of the news. Hertfordshire Constabulary reinvestigates Andrew Tate's sexual assault allegations. On Thursday, Hertfordshire Constabulary confirmed it would reinvestigate rape and sexual assault allegations against Andrew Tate, which were first reported between 2015. This decision follows an independent Office for Police Conduct (IOPC) review into the force's handling of original claims, with a former detective constable facing gross misconduct proceedings for quote-unquote alleged failures to properly investigate. Concurrent to the police probe, 4 women are suing Andrew Tate in the High Court for sexual violence, with the trial scheduled for June, estimated to take 5 weeks. So, Top G is back in the limelight, and he will. Until then, he's got to wait and see the date for the case, if it's to go ahead, and what will be the proceedings of this case. I remember months and months ago, me, Eric, and Risk, we were talking about Andrew Tate. Whilst at the time, he was seen as this red pill Giga Chad, telling men, exercise, work hard, adhere to the nuclear family, and to this day, he still stays true to those values. On the other hand, there's going to be people that are against a lot of things Andrew Tate has said and has done. A lot of people would describe him as a misogynist. That's not me saying it, that's what a lot of people online are claiming Andrew Tate is, in regards to his actions, his words that he said in the past, and even his energy. People say gives off misogyny. So where will this case go? To be honest, couldn't care less. And it's not that I hate Andrew Tate. I just know what this guy is all about. Even if people do argue there is positive outcomes regarding to Andrew Tate's advices, what he has said in the past, the topics he brings up, and the courses, school. I'm not sure how people would describe what Andrew Tate is running. Whatever business group or organization that Andrew Tate runs, people would say has a positive impact to those men. At the end of the day, like with many things we see on the news regarding celebrity gossip, debacles amongst wealthy elites, billionaires going on holiday, hosting an event somewhere on one of their private islands, it's all an act. Cases like this would be a psyop, a psychological operation to test if groups of people are drawn into such messages of what these elites, politicians, celebrities, influencers are saying in regards to world events, social issues, way of life, and how societies run today. This is no different. Not that I'm against this guy. I just know too much. I know what these people are all about. And again, even if people would say that there is a difference for the better for these people who get involved with what Andrew Tate does, so what? Good for you, man. You do you, I guess. That does not mean life is all rainbows and unicorns. Life goes on as it always does. And what would happen if Andrew Tate didn't exist in this world in the first place? What difference would this world make if Andrew Tate had not gone on to have the career as a kickboxer, starting this course business that has given men the opportunity to provide some financial, or at least financial stability and independence? From what I've heard from Illuminati, where would this world go? Would there any be any would there be anything being discussed in those issues? Or would they not be discussed at all? Because men like Andrew Tate were not there to set an example about how we should live life and what groups of people we should or should not pay attention to. That is the question. A very important question. Even as it is not everyone's cup of tea, it is still important nonetheless. Groups, individuals that make a difference, whether it be for the better or for the worst. That is all I would have to say in regards to that particular story. Bolsonaro placed under temporary house arrest after hospital discharge. On Friday, former president but he's not the president anymore, former president Jair Bolsonaro was discharged from a hospital in Brasilia to serve his 27-year sentence under house arrest at his residence in the Jardim Botanical neighborhood. The 71-year-old was hospitalized on March 3rd for pneumonia, leading the Supreme Court to grant house imprisonment due to his failing health. Bolsonaro must wear an ankle monitor and cannot communicate with anyone outside his home. Local police will monitor the residence and prevent gatherings by protesters. Supreme Court Justice Alexander G. Moai mandated a 90-day review of the arrangement and warned that Bolsonaro could return to prison if he violates any conditions. The 90-day review has drawn criticisms from both sides of the political divide. with allies calling it temporary detractors argue Bolsonaro is receiving lenient treatment. Interesting point. These are very valid points that's been made from both perspectives. On one hand, yes, Bolsonaro is at a certain age where his health is declining. On the other hand, the punishment he's getting, a lot of people say, is a lot softer than what many of his critics were expecting for Bolsonaro to pay the price for. What I would say is, whilst people should pay the price for what these people have done in the past, and in the now as well, it is also important to ensure that people are in good health. Not that I am supporting this guy. It is important that for as long as these people are still alive, they should continue to live their life as long as they can, whilst paying the price for their actions. I thought I was going to say something else beyond that. That is pretty much all I'd say on that. And I know there's going to be people saying that what Bolsonaro did is not that deep, it's not that big of a deal. And I remember, not sure who in my family had said this. I know someone in my family once said that whatever the Brazilian Supreme Court decided on was argued that the Supreme Court of Brazil are putting up cases, providing charges in ways that they see fit. I'm not saying I agree with that sentiment. That is something I've heard from someone in my family. And it does not matter at any point this is to be the case at any point in time, or even if this is true or not. It does make people wonder, could law enforcement in countries around the world be taken seriously if there are particular groups of people that are only putting up cases that are charging specific groups of people as it whims in favor of their ideals, regardless of what those ideals be, on what grounds of particular laws are these people breaking? That's at least what I'm thinking. So back to the story about temporary house arrest for Bolsonaro after hospital discharge. Look, he should be grateful he's not in prison right now. If he's done anything naughty whilst he's at home, then doesn't matter what the state of his health is at, authorities are not going to be afraid to chug him in the big house. That's for sure. And whilst people in the broad left of the political spectrum, they'll be cheering and celebrating up and down that Jair Bolsonaro is certainly never going to be the president of Brazil again. Don't forget, Flavio Bolsonaro is currently in the running to be the president of Brazil. I'd assume that Flavio is Jair's son. So people on the left don't get too excited yet. Jair Bolsonaro certainly not going to be president of Brazil at any point in his lifetime. That does not mean that the ideas of Bolsonaro isn't going to be any presence of Brazil's federal government. I'm just saying, don't jump to conclusions just yet. You never know what the results of this upcoming Brazil presidential election will be. And even when people are expecting Lula to continue his another 4 years as Brazil's president, in this day and age, anything is possible. Anything can happen. Even when things don't make any rhyme or reason, any logical sense. You never know. Just eat an auto trader among 5 firms under investigation in fake and misleading review crackdown. What the fudge? The British competition regulator has launched investigations into 5 companies including Auto Trader and Just Eat as part of its crackdown on fake reviews and misleading online ratings. Auto Trader and FIFA are being scrutinized over allegations that 1-star reviews were not published on Auto Trader's website, potentially skewing overall star ratings, while Just Eat is under investigation for possibly inflating ratings for some restaurants and grocery partners. The Competition and Markets Authority, CMA, can independently decide whether consumer law has been infringed and act against breaches, including levying fines and ordering businesses to improve their practices. Honestly, I'm not surprised. This happens with a lot of businesses and organizations. Well, mostly businesses. Businesses are going to do whatever they can to ensure that the most positive reviews are the ones that have been put forward to consumers, to show that this business can be trusted. We provide good quality service. There's nothing sketchy going on. And now there's going to be a crackdown because these companies are doing everything they can to get rid of the very negative reviews that would skewer the reputation of these businesses. I'm not saying I am agreeing with practices like this. I know a lot of businesses do whatever they can to ensure they provide a positive image for themselves, so people that are unsure about where to go, or if people are lenient towards using their services, they go on to use their services for as long as they want to use their service for. And if at any moment these people see the negative reviews, they second guess, thinking, is this really worth going over to that business and using their service? Or is it just a loud minority of people that is just very negative and has a very bad experience that applies to them? Even if the latter was true, there will be people that will say, nah, this business is terrible. The service is not as good as you think it is. Now, I would say, what would happen next with Just Eat and Auto Trader as the firms that are under investigation? And then I realized, even if there is a verdict being delivered, these businesses will still continue to exist anyway. They're just going to have to pay a fine, at least, for what they have done to ensure that these negative reviews, as valid they might address, and they seem to be, to not be seen publicly by a majority of consumers of said businesses. And also, if these businesses are trying so hard to hide the negative reviews, and not just hide negative reviews, if there are negative reviews that bring up valid points, and the said business does nothing to actually address the issue at hand and trying to improve on what needs to be improved on for the said business, are they really that good of a business to begin with? Or is their marketing team so good that no amount of negativity nor valid concern and criticism can tackle the foundations of the business operating the services and providing the goods to the consumers? Very important question, guys. Someone's going to be bringing these points, and it's no laughing matter. Even if it is, who will be laughing now by the time the verdict's delivered by these companies? And what their consequences will be? Over 3,000 on Saturday, March 28th, 2026, organisers expect the No Kings movement to hold more than 3,000 events nationwide, the largest mass mobilization in US history to protest President Donald Trump's administration. Protesters are rallying against Trump administration policies, particularly immigration enforcement operations by ICE and Border Patrol, which organizers say characterized the president's governing style as monarchical, rather indivisible. Project co-executive director Leah Greenberg noted that about 66% of planned protests will occur outside major urban centres, marking a nearly 40% increase from the movement's first day of action last June. St. Paul, Minnesota, will host the flagship rally at the Minnesota State Capitol, featuring Independent Senator Bernie Sanders and musician Bruce Springsteen, supporting locals who organized to protect their neighborhoods. Long-term civic engagement, not single-day records, remain the movement's primary goal, as co-president Robert Weisman emphasized building collective power in every community to resist authoritarianism and preserve democracy. The scale of these protests and the multiple locations of these protests taking place is quite incredible. Of course, other scales like this would have happened many decades ago. In recent memory, this is incredible. I will say that a protest of this scale is not just an achievement in itself, it is also setting a precedent in regards to how the United States is going on about their life and how the citizens are continuing to live in today's society, as well as the opinions that they have about the current Trump administration. Even when the scale of the No Kings protests does exceed previous records in the past, and the amount of messages that get across the globe becomes so hard to ignore, the administration have no choice but to respond to these protests. The outcomes that comes from these protests most likely will not be in the way that the No Kings protest activists were hoping to get. That is not to say that the United States will become a monarchy, although that is something that Risk 11, what he said a while back, saying maybe that could be an interesting idea. Well, he did say he would like to see some kind of monarchy in the United States. Actually, yeah, that Risk 11 said exactly that. And even when I do say that, the chances of the United States becoming a monarchy is never going to happen. It won't, ever. In the next few years, in the upcoming presidential election, Donald Trump has made a shakeup in US politics. And if the trends show, that is how the outcome of the next US presidential election will go. Vance becomes the next president of the United States after Trump. He does his terms, and then whoever was in Vance's ranks as president of the United States, those people would then be the next people to be the Republican nominee. Question is, would that Republican nominee be enough to outspark the Democrats nominee? It's too early to say. What I would say is there is very big growing resentment against Donald Trump and what he is doing right now. That is not going to change, nor get better. That does not mean that chances of impeachment and any changes that are highly unpopular aren't going to happen. A lot of these things will likely happen. Only time will tell. Time will certainly tell. iHeartRadio Music Awards 2026 Red Carpet Fashion. See every celebrity look. On Thursday, March 26, 2026. Pop artist Taylor Swift and Kansas City Chiefs tight end Travis Kelce made their first public appearance together at the iHeartRadio Music Awards at the Dolby Theatre in Los Angeles. The pair have been dating since 2023 and announced their engagement in August 2025, consistently supporting each other's careers through Chiefs games and Eras Tour appearances. Swift won Pop Album of the Year for The Life of a Showgirl. and credited Kelsey in her appearance speech, saying he makes her feel happy, confident, and free. Fans celebrated the couple's debut on social media, sharing videos of their interactions inside the venue, with Kelsey mouthing, "I love you," to Swift during her speech. Although reports suggest the couple is planning a 2026 wedding, neither has confirmed official dates. Sources indicate they are in early planning stages, researching venues and locations. Well, firstly, good for them. Hopefully they go on to have a happy life for as long as they shall live. And what about the rest of the people at the iHeartRadio Awards? Nothing against Swift and Kelsey. Good for them. In fact, has anyone even heard? Did any? Were there many people that were made aware that the Radio Awards, the iHeartRadio Music Awards, was going ahead? No haze. It's just a bit short notice, in my opinion. Well, that's if people pay attention to that specific award show. I know they will. Anyway, I'm just going off on something. So, anyway, congratulations to Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce on their engagements, and eventually their potential wedding day this year, if there is a date for that, of course. Otherwise, congratulations to all the other music artists that have been nominated and won the iHeartRadio Radio Music Awards for whatever categories that were there at the night, so on and so forth. Fantastic. Lloyd's Banking Group exposed the personal data of up to 447,936 customers in an IT glitch earlier this month, allowing users to see other customers' transactions and details. The bank has paid £139,000 in compensation to 3,625 customers for the distress and inconvenience caused by the breach, though no financial losses occurred. The incident highlights the vulnerability of Britain's digital banking infrastructure as lenders shift customers online by reducing physical branch networks. You know, as much as technology these days has become so convenient and accessible for many people, I would argue that a, a, a strong and consistent reliance on technology for our day-to-day lives is a massive vulnerability to everyone in today's world. What if the technology is down? Where are you going to go? What are you going to do? I'd say, even if there are e-banks, digital banking apps that do exist, I would say provide physical branches anyway, so that way there is a place for banking customers to take money out digitally into physical bills and coins. I don't know why that's all I can think of. I know that there is more benefits to a physical branch. I would say that there's nothing wrong with digital banking. Only relying on digital banking is going to be a flaw in many aspects. It is important to have other physical branches in place as well, because you never know. There are going to be senior citizens, whilst they have smartphones and they know the basics how digital banking works, not all senior citizens are going to know everything about what features that banks have on their digital app. And even if there are senior citizens that do know a bit about how such technology works, they would still prefer to go to a physical branch to do their transactions and deposits, withdrawals. That's how people do their banking and finances long before smartphones even existed. And whilst, again, digital banking has served convenience and accessibility for many people, That's not to say we should get rid of physical branches. What if the app doesn't work? You will have to go out eventually to a physical branch, if there is one near you. Yeah, that's all I have to say on that. And also, in regards to the IT glitch, where people's transactions have been exposed publicly, if at all. No, I'm not going to say it's not that big of a deal because no losses had occurred. Still, there are companies and organizations, they really have to work on strengthening their digital and physical security. You never know if problems like this are going to happen again. And if at a bigger scale than the previous attempts, that is something that has to be thought about thoroughly and carefully. Mental. Tom Brady says NFL didn't support his potential comeback. Wait, Tom Brady had a comeback? Tom Brady explored the possibility of returning to the NFL, but they did not like the idea because of his ownership stake in the Las Vegas Raiders. Brady said he is happily retired and has only played an advisory role for the Raiders, but does not have a daily role. To return to playing in the NFL, Brady would have to divest his ownership in the Raiders due to a policy prohibiting players from having equity in a team. Okay. That I would say that is a valid point. Imagine competing against a sports team where one of the players has equity and ownership of the team that you're playing for. That would be so intimidating. And I'm not saying this is ever going to happen. Imagine the team you're playing for that is owned by a player who's playing for a team you're playing against. If your team wins against the team that your team owner is playing for, and the outcome is your team wins, and then the team of your team owner loses, what's the team owner going to do? Is he going to have a fuss? Is he going to throw a tantrum? Going to say, you're terrible, get out of here. You're too intimidating, you're too good. Again, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but imagine if something like that actually happened. An owner of a team decides to let go of players because of outcomes of a game that did not favor the owner in question. That would be so funny. And circumstances like that, where players own stakes or equity or have shares in another sports team, actually does exist. I know the most notable player club ownership stakeholders, Luka Modric has a share in Swansea City, the soccer football club based in Wales. Another soccer football player that is now retired, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, he has shares in Hammarby, another soccer football club based in Sweden, and Kylian Mbappe has shares or is a part owner of a soccer football club in France. I think the club is spelled Caen. Caen. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I'm saying right, and I know a lot of French people are. Going to be very disgusted. Going to be very disgusted by foreigners trying to pronounce French words. I'm not going to argue with that. I understand the resentment. And the thing is, Modric and Mbappe are still playing as professional players, and yet they have ownerships of other sports teams. So, yeah, in regards to the NFL, I understand how a player in the NFL has part ownership of another team within the NFL, and that might play a conflict of interest, ensuring that the player that owns the other club, as a player, gets favorable results when advancing in the competition to win the division, the conference, and winning the Super Bowl. That is understandable. I'll give the NFL. That does not mean this won't happen anywhere else, which it does. And the three examples I've shown you are the most notable ones. in a completely different sport, which will have different rules about ownership. Nonetheless, ownership structures and who and which people owns these teams, even if they're players that are actively playing as professional players, it can happen, and it does happen at some point, especially right now. And that is it for the episode.